Hey there, and welcome to U Talk. We connect with amazing people from across Canada and ask them about their stories, passions, and experiences. I'm your host, Ryan Funk. The harvest season and fall have significance for many people and cultures. The end of October signifies Halloween, but for Mexico, it's also their celebration of Dia de Muertos, the Day of the Dead. Here's Alberto, president of the Mexican Association of Manitoba, to teach us about Mexico, the association, and of course, the Day of the Dead.
My name is Alberto Velasco Acosta, and I wear a few hats. I've been in Canada for 16 years now. I'm originally from Mexico, so my university in Mexico has this student exchange program with the U of M, and that's what brought me to Manitoba in the first place. Having that international experience at the U of M, then went back home. I had met someone here, so I came back and started a family with two beautiful boys, and that's that story. That was a while ago. And like I said, I'm originally from Mexico. It's a city called Morelia. It's right in the center of the country. It's for those that, I know that Mexico is somewhat familiar here, but most of the people tend to think about Mexico on Cabo, Puerto Vallarta, Cancun, with the resorts.
Yeah, the vacation areas.
The vacation areas, right at the beach and so on. But there's a different type of tourism in Mexico to call it somehow. It's the old colonial cities, and those tend to be in the center, and my city is one of them, Morelia. Think of Quebec City and how French Quebec City is, but it would be the Spanish version, right? Like my city is colonial Spanish from back in the day. So that's where I'm from. Size, about the same size as Winnipeg in terms of population.
Okay.
That made it very easy for me to blend in Winnipeg with the feel and vibe of a medium-sized city like Winnipeg. So that's on the personal side, and on the professional side of things, I wear a hat as the guy that sells Winnipeg to international companies that are growing. So I work at Economic Development Winnipeg, and in a nutshell, that's what I do. I talk and connect with partners outside of Canada, with companies outside of Canada, and talk to them about how Winnipeg can be the best location for the next investment or the next plans. And it's fun. It's fun to talk about why Winnipeg is such a great city.
The world is becoming more globalized, so you need to look for those budding opportunities of corporations and businesses all around the world.
Yeah, and it's fun as well, because sometimes we lose track of the fact that we're competing at that level as well, right? I mean, think of company ABC, and they're growing, they're doing so well that they need to have another presence in North America, factory, a new distribution center. But we're not the only ones talking to them. It may be Edmonton, it may be Calgary, it may be Saskatoon, or in the States, right? It may be Kansas City, it may be Memphis. And we got to compete head to head, showing to them why Winnipeg is the best place. And it is. On the volunteer side of things, I work right now as the president of the Mexican Association of Manitoba. And it is a group that has been around for 16, 17 years. And the goal of this group is to promote the Mexican culture, and also to serve as a hub for the Mexicans that live in the province. So that's been part of my volunteer work, but also keeps me very engaged with the community. And it's very rewarding to see that we get to have the opportunity to promote what Mexico is as a culture, right? People may read in the news, there's more to it. And that's very commonsensical, but it's very easy to lose track of. So we're taking that on as a group that can show what Mexico is as a culture. And like I said, also as a connecting hub, right? Because whenever there's a new Mexican landed in Winnipeg as a student, as a worker, or as an immigrant, they tend to look us up, because we all feel the need to get connected with our own culture. And for any practical matters, it's not just Mexicans, but any Latino immigrant coming over here, they find us, and they like to join us in how we celebrate Mexican and Latino culture. So that was a big, long intro, Ryan. A quick glimpse of who Alberto is.
Hey, no worries. It's always exciting to find out about people I'm talking to and what they're all involved in. So let's talk a little bit more about the Mexican Association. And you also mentioned other like Latino cultures. Why is it important to have that base here in Winnipeg to connect all these different individuals?
And you know what? It's obviously every culture is different, but there are some cultures that we have this need of connecting with our own when you're abroad, when you're in a different country, because we're very proud of our culture and we want to keep communicating in our language and having the same context point of references, So, and I think that the Latino culture is very much like that. We like to land in a new country and we want to find our own, want to find people that speak Spanish, people that understand our jokes, people that understand where we're coming from. And that is a natural thing. And you can see it anywhere around the world. If people were to Google Mexican or Latino Association or Community in X, there'll be
there'll be one
place. Yeah, because we all have the need to connect, right? And to feel like we're building a piece of home in a new home, right? And that's the need that we have as a Mexican culture and as a Latino culture, and we know that that's what we need, and that's why we're trying to recreate those opportunities for people to come and feel a little bit like home in a new home.
That's incredibly important, kind of feeling connected to your roots and being able to celebrate your culture, because as we've seen, throughout history, a lot of people have lost some of their culture and who they were, and it sucks. It sucks when you're disconnected from something that is just so important to many people.
Yeah, absolutely. And you know what? For many of us, including myself, I got two boys. Remy is 14 and Emilio is 10. They're growing over here, right? And they're Franco-Manitoban school division, so they're having their education in French. Obviously, English, they pick it up in the environment. So for me, it was very important for them to speak Spanish and to understand the culture that they have, right? Mm-hmm. And I'm not the only one. There's many of us, Mexicans that land in Manitoba. We're having kids, and it's important for us, for the kids to learn that. And the type of activities that we organize help us to transmit some of those cultural elements and the heritage down to the next generation.
These movements of people wanting to reclaim and keep heritage and culture going. I know right now I recently got into TikTok and I go down that rabbit hole sometimes a little longer than I should. But there's a lot of people of European descent who are trying to find their ethnic European heritage again. That's kind of been, it's become homogenous, right? Like in Europe of culture. So there's a lot of people trying to reclaim it. And it's super cool, like seeing that aspect of Ukraine has some really cool history and culture there, and their fashion and art is just so fascinating.
Absolutely, and every culture is like that, right? I mean, for hundreds of years, those cultures have been developing their own way of cooking, the food, art, how people express themselves. Dance is a way that we all have in common on how we express ourselves. And when you connect with those different elements, it makes you feel identified to that larger group, right? And oftentimes that larger group that's what your family represents. And when you try to reconnect to your roots, you start to realize that a lot of the things that you took for granted start to make sense, right? Mm-hmm. Or little things that were different at home from what you saw in other places. Those are things that have a place in your culture. So little things that people start to realize once they start digging into the roots, right?
And I think that's another amazing part of like various cultural and ethnic associations and organizations throughout Canada and the world, being able to share that culture with others, like at culture festivals or various celebrations. It's so much fun to go somewhere and be like, oh, what is this? Tell me a little bit about your culture and heritage, and then finding a little, like, tasting the food. It's always so exciting, like multicultural events.
The awesome things about those type of events is that oftentimes people realize that we got more in common than not. When you go into a different culture, says, "Oh, you guys also do that," or "You guys also eat this," or "You also use this other ingredient." And it's when you find those commonalities that makes you realize that, yeah, we're different, but we're also very connected as different as we may be as cultures, right?
Dumplings would be thing, like, there's so many different places that have a dumpling-esque kind of food. Like, you have dumplings in very many Asian communities. You have, like, pierogies in the Ukraine.
Panadas in Latin America, right?
Yeah.
Which is the same idea. In Italy, they got calzones, which they're bigger, but the same principle, right? But yeah, you're right. There's commonalities throughout.
What can you tell me a little bit about the Mexican and Latino community, at least here in Winnipeg, when people are looking at the various cultural communities? One of the big ones is Filipinos here in Winnipeg, and you don't necessarily hear too much about the Latin countries here. So what can you tell me a little bit about that?
It's a community that is growing, fortunately. And one of the things that we love at the Mexican Association is, like I said before, is that we also attract other Latinos, right? Not necessarily just Mexicans. So a case in point, in mid-September, we celebrated the Mexican Independence Day. We had this awesome event at the park. And it was beautiful to see that not just Mexicans had shown up, but we had people from Ecuador, from Peru, from Brazil, from Colombia, from Guatemala, and everybody was just celebrating as much as we were, right? And that is important to see and to realize, because even though we're coming, the most of us from Mexico, there's other cultures that identified with the culture and the commonalities that we have within the region, right? And I mentioned those differences because when I first got here in Manitoba a while back, I had people saying, "Oh, there's a lot of Mexican people here in Manitoba. The Mexican community is big." And then, like I said before, as every Mexican will do, I started digging, right? Like, where are you? How can I get connected to them? And then what I started realizing is that, yes, they are Mexicans, but there weren't that many. So, but the Latino community was bigger than that. And I know that there was a big community from El Salvador in Central America and from Chile. And those communities came back in the 70s, right? So they were a large community and they've been here for quite a while. So they were well established. And then you had other Central American countries like Nicaragua and other countries that have been trickling down. So then I stepped back and I was thinking, maybe the perception from the non-Latinos is that all of us were Mexican, right? Because there's quite the community from El Salvador, from Nicaragua, from Chile, they're big. So maybe that was the perception. And that's what we said, maybe we should also, as we promote Mexican culture, also promote the diversity within Latin America, in the sense that not everybody's Mexican. And there's nothing wrong with being called Mexican where you're not, but we got to respect the diversity within Latin America. So we got to, and that's what we love, working with our brothers and sisters of the Colombian Association, the El Salvador's Association, the Peruvian Association, because that is important to do that type of awareness, right? That Latin America is more than Mexico.
It's really important to have that awareness and engagement with the community, because although it may not be incredibly offensive compared to like some other things, it isn't cool to like mix up various cultural groups and ethnicities and countries. Like you mentioned, everyone is unique and different, and we should learn about those differences. There are similarities, but that's just how we can connect and then learn further about each other.
And I guess a similar situation that may be more closer to home from other communities is you see cultures like those from Poland, Ukraine, and that part of Europe. They also share a lot of similarities, right? And you do the same with the Mediterranean countries like Italy and Spain and Portugal and those countries in Northern Africa. So it makes sense that the region shares a lot of commonalities and maybe seen as a one block. And that's good, but it's also good to see the diversity within that block, right? And that's what we're trying to do in the Latin American community as well.
Because the big question always is, over these last almost 2 years now, is how has COVID affected the Mexican Association?
Yeah, that's an interesting question because it did affect big time. A clear example or a key case in point is the Mexican Pavilion at Folklorama. So I believe that I'm assuming, Folklorama is well known in Winnipeg and Manitoba. And as you know, is the longest multicultural festival in Canada, over 40 years that it's been in operation. And the Mexican community, we've been trying to put up a good pavilion for the festival, and as a way for us to continue doing what we do, which is promoting the Mexican culture and attract more Latinos to what we do. And I believe that we had been successfully doing that. We had a pavilion that was very busy, highly attended. People, they gave us great feedback on what they were seeing in terms of show, food, and arts display. Just to give you an idea, the last pavilion we had was in 2018, right? That was the last we had normal things in mass with lots of people. At the Mexican Pavilion, we had just over 22,000 people coming to the pavilion throughout the week.
Wow.
I know.
Those are insane numbers.
Those are great numbers. And that's why we would rent in the third floor of the convention center, right? Because we needed that much space. Oftentimes we were sold out with 1,000 people because that was the capacity of the place. So 1,000 people per show. So we found ourselves in a situation that we were fortunate to have that big platform to get to know, to show the culture, but also, like I said, connect with the Latino community and the broader Manitoba community. And all of a sudden the pandemic came and Folklorama was canceled and there's no more pavilion, right? And that was a big void that was left there because it was the big family reunion. I mean, it was all fun, sharing the culture and bringing performers from Mexico and being all proud about what they have to show. And it was great to have that many visitors. But the personal reason for us to put the pavilion together is because it was a big family reunion in the sense that all of the volunteers there, they're members of the community that oftentimes we don't necessarily see them all year long, right? Because people are busy. Life takes over and people go in different directions. But when it was time to organize and coordinate the pavilion, boom.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
There and get it, just made it happen, right? And it's that family reunion thing that is also missing. I mean, my boys, they've been volunteering at the pavilion since they were little, cleaning tables, moving stuff around, or even performing on stage. And they've been asking, when are we going to have the pavilion back? Because it's a family affair thing. So that's been a big void in the community, right?
Yeah. Man, when we can start having these large festivals again, it is just the energy and excitement. It's just going to be palpable. Like, it's going to be so exciting to finally go out, do these things, go to these events. I know for myself, I am feeling I'm getting to that point where I'm feeling anxious to do stuff.
I hear you. And like I mentioned, in September, we had the Mexican Independence Day celebration. The first in-person event we had in 2 years, right? Almost. So December 2019, that was the last in-person event we had. And then from there, it was just virtual events. We tried to keep up with the community and keep them active with virtual classes on yoga, Spanish lessons for kids, salsa dancing lessons for adults and kids. And we tried, but we saw that the attendance wasn't as active as in-person events, right? So September, as we know, this September, the COVID numbers are a little bit better. The lockdown was easing, so the restrictions were much softer by mid-September than they were anytime in the past 2 years, right? So we had this park, and so always going to be outdoors to minimize the risk. And we worked with the province in securing a vaccination bus. So we had a vaccination bus on site for people that either needed the vaccine or they wanted to get the second or whatever. They had the option over there. And it was a risk in the sense that we didn't know how comfortable people would be in participating in a live in-person event, right? So we organized all of this, and personally, I thought if there's 30 people that show up, that'll be a win, right? Because I would understand people are concerned, they may be worried about what's happening, and maybe too many people. And luckily, we had a good crowd. I'll say close to 100 people came, and keeping physical distancing. Obviously, we're recommending people to stay distant in groups per family or per groups of friends. And, but it was very rewarding to see that there were a lot of new Mexicans, in the sense that people that had just arrived in Manitoba in less than a year. Other Latinos, families like I said, from Ecuador, from Guatemala, Colombia, Brazil, Peru, that they were new. So it was very rewarding, but in a clear example that we all need that in-person connection.
For those who are extroverts, it's something that has been way. I have a couple of friends who are very introverted, so they've loved not having to go anywhere or see anyone. But for myself, it's like I just want to do things, but you got to stay safe. You got to stay safe. But that's super exciting. That is super cool that event was able to happen with so many people, and it likely made many people's days or even like the year at that point.
Yeah. It definitely, it did it for me, for sure.
Some of the stores may be trying to tell us otherwise. It is the harvest Halloween season. I'm wearing a Halloween shirt right now. I'm super excited about Halloween. And Halloween and this harvest time, this fall season, it has a lot of significance to many different cultures and peoples. And one of the big ones is the Day of the Dead in Mexico. We've seen it a little bit in media. I think it's the Book of Life, as well as Coco. Talked about kind of those aspects a little bit. So what can you tell me about this this cultural event in Mexico?
It is a big celebration, and it's a little bit of a blend, because just as a quick background story, what Mexico is a new country, right? Is the result of the mix of the Europeans, mostly Spanish and Portuguese, with the local First Nations communities, right? And before that, Mexico didn't exist. And as old as we sound, like the Aztecs and the Mayans, that was not Mexico. It was before Mexico, right? So, and I say that because things like celebrations like Dia de los Muertos, Day of the Dead, it's a reflection of that mixing of some pre-Hispanic traditions and the Spanish Catholic traditions. It's a blend. So what we do in Mexico is we all go to our families' graveyards, and we bring food, the food that they used to like, right? There's a traditional bread, Pan de Muertos, which is what we enjoy that specific day. For the little kids that passed away, there's candies. So some people might have seen those candy skulls.
Yeah, the sugar skulls.
The sugar skulls, yeah. So when there's a child that is deceased in the family, use that to celebrate their life. And we all show up at the graveyard. People bring drinks, of course. Tequila was the favorite drink of such relative, or Corona, or beer, whatever it may be. And then the family gathers there, decorating the tomb, the graveyard, with flowers. There's marigold, I think is the name in English. Cempasúchil is the flower that we typically use. It's an orange flower, so you'll see orange flowers all over the place. And then we stay till late at night, just telling stories, remembering those family relatives that had passed away, because it's the tradition is telling the story that those relatives are not dead as long as you keep them alive in your stories, right? So you got to keep passing on the stories of who great grandma was, who great great was, who that such and such is, and the whole family is going to share whatever stories they have lived with those family members, right? And it's also a way to pass on to the next generation, right? Like they might have not had the opportunity to meet great great grandma, but they know that person through the stories that we share, right? And that takes place mostly in central Mexico. I am from Michoacan, that's a state in central Mexico, and Michoacan is big on Dia de Muertos. It's a big celebration, so we have altars or altars where we decorate at home. You know, there's a whole tradition, different levels. Each level has a meaning, and then we put the pictures of the family that we're celebrating that day, Pan de Muertos, the Day of the Dead Bread, and then the sugar skulls if there's kids in the memories, and just decorate it, right? And you have that at home to talk about those family members. And that's what we do here in Canada, because I don't think it would be a good idea to go to anyone's tomb here in Canada, being the only family eating on top of it, and you know, but we keep that tradition at home. We do build that altar with the pictures and the decorations, and we still talk about the stories here in Canada. And I gotta say, as the Mexican Association, we're having Dia de Muertos celebrations on Saturday, October the 30th. There's going to be more information if people are curious about that on our website, mexicanmb.ca, or just looking the association on Facebook. They'll see the information on where it's going to be. It's going to be at the Salsa Explosion studio in downtown. And we'll be having some workshops for families to come and celebrate, right? Either doing some art crafts on sugar skulls, Pan de Muertos, and just to share a little bit of that cultural element with families here.
I think it's really cool, specifically about this festival, is the connection that it shows Mexican families have to each other. It's that familial bond, that celebration of family, history, telling stories, and then I think that's incredibly cool and important to have.
Yeah, it is, because it truly is a celebration of your family, right? Because that's how we think, that's how you honor that great grandma or that grandfather that worked hard, or whatever the story may be. That's how you celebrate them. That's how you keep their legacy alive, but sharing those stories. And those stories can go from anywhere, from funny stories, funny anecdotes, to really touching stories. But the point is, you share who they were, right? And that's very unique.
Family coming together, connection, telling stories. It's almost very similar to, I mean, just besides the whole commercialized version of it, but like Christmas as well for many
Right.
communities, of coming together, family, and just enjoying each other's company.
That's what we try to keep up with here in Canada, here in Manitoba, and it's really rewarding to see that not just Latinos, but we got other non-Latino Canadians coming and wanted to learn about how we celebrate Dia de Muertos, right? Which is right after Halloween. So we are 1,000% Canadian, celebrating on the 31st, and the next day we flip back to our complete Mexicanness by celebrating Dia de Muertos on November 1st and 2nd.
I mean, the more festivals and more holidays to celebrate, the better, right?
Why not?
How do you feel representation of this holiday and festival has been in media?
It's been picking up. Like I remember when I first came to Canada 16 years ago, there was nothing. What people knew of Mexico was very limited. And again, going back to Puerto Vallarta, whatever they see at the beach. But in the past few years, in very recent years, people are starting to get a little bit of an appreciation of what else is happening there, right? Like you mentioned it, the movies like The Book of Life, Coco, really do a good job in explaining what those traditions are from the inside. I was really pleasantly surprised at the great job that Coco had, or Disney had done with the movie Coco, right? when it was coming out, I was a little bit concerned. Just like, oh, okay, let's see what Hollywood did with my. It's like, let's see what kind of modifications they had to make. But when I watched it, I was really touched because they did a good job in going into the culture, learning the traditions, learning how things are, the stories behind it, and they built up the storyline for Coco. So that was really well done. Even things like the alebrijes, those funny animals. Alebrijes is like, who picked that up? They did, and they put it in the movie because alebrijes is so local that only Mexicans would know what alebrije is, but they put it in the movie. It's like, that was so well done. So to your point, I think that I see the positive of it, that it's becoming more and more well known. I'll say that what is very traditional in Dia de Muertos is getting that makeup as a skeleton. The name of it is Katrina. I don't even know what the literal translation would be, but Katrina is like a very elegant woman, right? Mm-hmm. Katrina is the very elegant man with tuxedo, a hat, and class, right? And in Mexico, started by people making fun of rich people, saying it doesn't matter how much money you have and how elegant and how distant you may feel from us, common people, you're still gonna die. You're still gonna die at the end of the day, like many of us, right? So that was the thinking behind Katrina, and that's why if people Google it, a very common thing to do is to dress up as Katrina, which is very elegant, but you use the makeup as a skeleton, right? All black and white and so on. Now that is becoming more streamlined. Now I go to the Halloween stores here in Winnipeg, and I see a Dia de Muertos kit where people can paint themselves. And I've had a few people asking me, is that offensive to you guys Mexicans that people just buy those kits and do the makeup as Dia de Muertos? And I've talked about this with my Mexican friends, like, what do you guys think? I'm not offended. I'm actually, it's great for me to see that other people are willing to share my culture and to live it somehow. But I was asking my Mexican friends, like, what do you guys think? Should we feel offended? I don't feel offended. And the consensus was that I don't think anybody feels offended. If people are curious about learning about what we do and putting that type of makeup on as part of the tradition, and if they want to do it, that's awesome. That's a first step into people being mm-hmm. curious on what else we do in Mexico to celebrate things like this, right?
There's definitely a little bit of like whether or not something is cultural appropriation or cultural a cultural appreciation.
Yeah.
But yeah, like definitely if someone's going in like, oh, this is interesting, and then it inspires them to go to associations like the Mexican Association or find out about other cultures. It can definitely be a means. I mean, in terms of commercialization, corporations will do anything to make money. But at least it starts to get the idea out there in people's head to be like, oh, what is this? They Google it, they learn more. Potentially it can help people find these different cultural institutes.
And I think that's how we like to see it, right? Is it may be an invitation, a gateway into learning more about what we do. And that, I guess that speaks, I'm just thinking out loud over here, is very consistent to the way that we Mexicans and Latinos see our culture, in the sense that we don't keep our culture in the house. Like, mm-hmm. we don't lock itself inside our little bubble. We're very proud of what we are, what we do as a culture, and we'd like to share it. Like I said, we do events, we do the pavilion, and we open our homes to it, right? The famous phrase, "Mi casa es tu casa," my home is your home, because we like to share everything, right? So I guess when things like that happen, that we start seeing the Dia de Muertos makeup being sold in Walmart and all of that, I don't think it's consistent with that feeling of we wanting to share what we do and who we are, right? We're not necessarily protected, like, no, this is just for us and nobody should be touching it type of thing.
Mm-hmm. Been fantastic talking with you, learning more about Mexican culture, a little bit about other Latino cultures as well, and the Mexican Association. just to kind of wrap things up, where can people find out more about the Mexican Association? And in terms of Mexican culture, what is one thing you hope people walk away with from this chat?
I love those questions. So first, to find us out, our website is just Mex y Can, but that's MEXYCANMB.ca. That's a play on words in Spanish, right? Like Mexico, EY means and Canada. So Mexican, but it's also Mexican, right?
Anyway. Oh, that's clever. That's clever. I like that.
It makes sense in Spanish, but if you don't speak Spanish, like, what do you have a Y in the middle, right? Or they can find us on Facebook, Mexican Association of Manitoba, like that. They'll find us up. We only got one page. And that is the best way to get connected, because either Facebook or Instagram, we're constantly updating what's going on. Any event, anything going on with the community here is going to be posted up there. And we're also connected with the Mexican consulate in Toronto and the Mexican embassy in Ottawa. So whenever they got something to share, they send it to us, and we post that those communications on our social media. So that is the best way to stay connected. In terms of what is the key takeaway is that I would love to encourage people to feed that curiosity of what else is going on in Mexico, what else is happening beyond what you see on the news, in the newspaper, that there may be things saying that it's dangerous, that there's shootings, the cartels, and so on. Yes, that is part of the reality, but it's not the full reality, right? There's more to it. Mexico is also more than Acapulco and Cancun and Cabo. It's like, yes, that is part of the country. It's part of the reality, but it's not the only part. So I would encourage people to just be curious and dig a little bit deeper. What else is happening? What else can people see and learn and touch and feel in a country like Mexico and Latin America? Because every country has its unique taste, right? Colombia has beautiful things going on. Peru as well, Ecuador, Brazil, Chile. People just need to hopefully have that curiosity, right?
If you have any stories you'd like us to share or communities we should highlight, leave a comment down below and subscribe to stay up to date with everything U Multicultural is doing. I'm Ryan Funk. This was U Talk, and have yourself a good one.